Hello everybody and welcome to this video on Spike Volleyball. This is a new sports game that has come out on PlayStation 4 this week, and it's one that I was really looking forward to. That's going to sound silly in hindsight because the game is really quite appalling, but I really was looking forward to it because I'm a huge fan of volleyball, and while I didn't expect it to be to the standards of EA with FIFA or 2K games with NBA 2K or Sony with MLB The Show, I was looking forward to what is effectively the first attempt to bring a volleyball game to console. This is the first attempt at a serious simulation of the sport of volleyball, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of volleyball. I actually watch it all the time in the Olympics, and it's actually quite a major sport in Japan. So when I'm in Japan, it's actually on TV a lot, and I tend to watch it when it's there. I'll kind of follow along with the competitions as best I can. It's pretty hard to follow the sport in Australia, unfortunately, but I am a genuine fan of volleyball, and as a result I was looking forward to seeing how this game kind of turned out. Now, this game was never going to have the budget of an EA or a 2K games, because not only is the audience for volleyball not on console, you know, there are obviously a lot of fans of volleyball out there, but they're not necessarily playing consoles and waiting for a volleyball game on the console. Unlike, for example, FIFA. FIFA has this huge audience of football fans who then look forward to playing football on their console. That kind of community hasn't built up around volleyball because there hasn't been a game of that type that has been released in the past. As a result, you can't exactly expect a game, a volleyball sports game, to sell 1 million units within the first couple of hours like EA does with FIFA. And while this is all understandable, and while I certainly don't hold it against the game that it's got such a terrible budget, that the game itself has turned out to be quite terrible, it is nonetheless a problem for these kind of niche sports. And I wanted to make this video, I guess, to talk about how niche sports are really struggling in the world where video games are so influential over the kind of sports that people actually follow in the real world as well. So we'll use soccer or football and EA and FIFA as an example. Football is by far the most recognised sport in the world, and it is the most popular sport in the world for a good reason. It has this most amazing infrastructure around it that really does a good job of promoting the sport. It's not just that the sport itself is a great sport, because sports are sports, and everybody has their personal tastes in sport and all that kind of stuff. It's that FIFA and other bodies of football around the world have been so good at promoting the sport and making sure that it's in front of people constantly, so they have a chance to learn to love the sport. And that's where FIFA, the football game series, comes in, because EA pushes those out every year, and they're of a very high standard because they have such great backing from both FIFA and EA, and you know, they make such good money. As a result of that, football is part of people's gaming lives, and obviously the huge community of people that are out there playing video games have a real chance to get hooked on the sport via the game. It becomes almost a promotional activity for the sporting companies, for the sporting organisations. And you can be sure that if something were to happen and EA were to start to produce genuinely poor quality football games, and I'm not talking just about football games that people don't like or they're not enough of an update from the previous year. I'm talking about football games that play like this volleyball game. If EA was to start to do that, you can be sure that FIFA would take the license away from it very quickly and give it to a publisher that would do, again, a very high quality job with it, again with FIFA's support, because to FIFA, football is a major, the video game football is a major opportunity to promote the actual real life activity of football. And that's, that also applies to Madden or NHL or baseball, MLB, or 2K games. Each of those sports, each of those kind of huge American sports, have such a amazing global community as well of people playing the games or people watching the sports, across the world, because a lot of us got into those sports via video games. I know for a fact dozens of people in Australia who never watched the NHL because it was never on TV, and ages ago we didn't have cable TV or anything like that. People got into NHL thanks to the video games. They actually found their favourite characters thanks to the licenses, their favourite players. And then once ice hockey started to get played in Australia on cable TV, a lot of people signed up to the cable TV networks to get access to the ice hockey. So it does have an effect. Having a good quality video game behind a sport does act as a promotional tool for that sport. And that's absolutely vital in a world where esports is taking over everything, in a world where video games have become the dominant entertainment media for younger players in particular. Those outreach activities, those promotional activities for a lot of these sports do need to revolve around having a video game out there on the market to promote that sport to those people. But then you get to something like Spike Volleyball and it kind of has the opposite effect. Not only does this not do a great job of actually showing what volleyball is and how exciting volleyball can actually be, it's only vaguely reminiscent of the kind of the tactics and the speed and the energy that goes into a volleyball match. But because it plays so badly, it's not going to encourage people to then go to their local volleyball club and try it out, or to see if they can find a volleyball match to watch on YouTube or TV or whatever. Those few people who aren't existing fans of volleyball who pick this up aren't going to learn to love volleyball as a result of this, and nobody's going to go over to the house of somebody who is a volleyball fan, play this, and then come back and say, I've got to get a copy of that for myself because I loved it so much. So unfortunately this game doesn't work as a very good promotion of the sport. It doesn't represent the sport particularly well, and on top of that, people will be willing to forgive graphical issues, and people are willing to look past the fact that the game doesn't look as good as a EA game or whatever. What people are less inclined to forgive is a game that plays clunkily, and this game does play very clunkily. It's not an enjoyable game to play. And of course, it's not the only game out there of a niche sport which doesn't do a great job of actually representing the sport. Of course it's not. There are plenty of other good examples of that. I mean, my favourite example is handball, because I played both of the handball games that were released on PlayStation 4, and I played them a lot, and I supported them by buying them at full price and all that kind of stuff, and they're just not very good games. They're just not very, very representative of what handball is, and if you were to watch a handball match and then play the game, you would almost think that they were different sports. But I don't want to blame the developers or the publishers for this, because I think they're doing the best they can with very limited budgets and very limited interest in their games. And this kind of thing is promotion, again, for the sport, and can build into something if they're given half a chance. What needs to happen is the actual sporting bodies need to invest in this stuff. These sporting bodies are not broke. They don't have the money of a FIFA or any of the American kind of sports leagues. They don't have that kind of cash behind them, but they have money, especially around an Olympics year, when these sports are actually in the Olympics and people see it. There's always this huge uptick in interest in the sport, and there's the huge numbers of people that sign up for every sport that's represented in the Olympics. The part of the kind of the industry, the global sporting bodies of these sports need to take that as an opportunity and really spin it into something that has kind of long-term marketing value, which is a video game. They need to invest in the video game. They need to get these global licenses to the developers and stop with this unlicensed stuff, so people can get to know the names of their favorite players. They can develop favorite teams to follow, and they can start to show an interest in the real world sport as well. They need to give the developer and the publisher enough money to actually create something that doesn't have to be to the standard of FIFA, but it needs to be medium tier, and it needs to really genuinely represent the sport's strengths. So for instance, with volleyball, it needs to show the speed of the ball through the air, and it needs to show the fast tactics of players, and it needs to show the desperation as players dive around the court. This game doesn't do any of that because it's just so clunky. Players stand around doing nothing. They don't scramble much, and the spikes and all of that kind of they look fast, but the game has a real sluggishness about it, which really hurts it as well. All of that could be remedied if the volleyball organization actually invested in this as well and saw, the sport of volleyball, saw an opportunity to grow the sport of volleyball by having a good quality game out there. And I think all sporting bodies need to do this. Every sporting body needs to have a good quality video game out there to help promote the game, not just to get players to play the video game, but also to encourage them to start to look at the real world sport as well. Anyway, I recommend you, if you have any interest in volleyball whatsoever, still support this game. Buy it. It's not a great game. You're not going to love it, but buy it anyway, because in supporting this kind of game, you actually support the potential, at least, for these games to become more and to kind of grow. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thanks very much for watching this video, and we'll see you at the next one.